So we've been here at the Global Entrepreneur Acceleration Program here in Bilbao for the last few days, and you did a session for us on Tuesday around design thinking, I found it a really interesting session. And it's something that I think a lot of startups and entrepreneurs don't think about when they're going through their design stages for their business. Can you share us what some of the key ideas behind it are and some of the benefits for a startup?
Sure. Well, I think it's, it takes some skill and some experience to do it really well, but I think the basic principles are really pretty simple. There's really three basic principles, I think. The first one is empathy, and the second one is prototyping, and the third one is storytelling. And I think if you can grasp all three of those, which may seem somewhat foreign to most entrepreneurs, I think it can be really, really helpful. So empathy is basically just getting inside the head of the people that you're designing for, whether it's a product or a service. And it's not just the users of the product or service, but all the other key influencers. So it could be the distribution channel, it could be pundits who may review your product or service, bloggers, and so on. And the easiest way to do that, and I think the best way, is just to spend time with people, observing them in their natural environment. Usually we do things like surveys because they're really easy to do. They don't give you much in the way of inspiration. They might be good for quantifying certain things, but that's about it. Yeah. And I think just observing people, much like an ethnographer or an anthropologist would, you get amazing insights just from watching people. Like, you and all entrepreneurs know their product or service so well, you can do it in your sleep. But when you hand it to someone else and you say, give it a try, it's amazing what you can learn about the blockages and the problems that exist. And also whether or not people even understand what it is that you're offering, which is often a big problem. So empathy is kind of the first one. The second one, prototyping. I think there's no way to know in advance. There's nobody who knows, and there's no science to predict how to develop an application, let's say on the internet or a mobile device, or any kind of product or service. Sure, there are some ideas and rules of thumb and history that you can draw upon, and you should, but ultimately you have to test it on real people. And so I recommend making prototypes of whatever it is that you're going to develop as early as possible, even on day one. So not to wait until it's weeks or months or years into a process, but start right away. You can prototype things really easily on paper using storyboards, or having screenshots that you mock up in Photoshop, or sketches that are really, really simple and easy to do, or you can make a video, or if it's a physical product, you can make something out of cardboard or foam and show it to people.
So all of these are very visual, very interactive ways.
Yeah, trying to make things tangible to people, because it's one thing to give them a PowerPoint presentation, and it's another thing to really actually see something.
I guess that goes back to the watching people in their own environment as well. So once you give them something tangible to play with, you can watch and see how they interact with it.
So yeah, first, you want to get inspired. So you don't necessarily have to show them anything, but you can if you have some things to show them, because you'll get more tangible feedback. But then once you're inspired and you start to design something, then you definitely have to start prototyping, getting feedback. And often these cycles of kind of brainstorming ideas, prototyping, testing, revising, these cycles can happen dozens or even hundreds of times in the project. And you don't need to prototype the entire product or service. You just pick the key areas that you're uncertain about. So maybe you're uncertain about the sign-up process, or the process by which people start to use something. Or you're uncertain about the distribution process and how will your product or service stand out in the crowd of tens of thousands of pieces of software and so on.
That's a really good point that you make there, is to focus on one part of what you're working on, because quite often you're so excited about the big picture of what you're doing as an entrepreneur. Finding that one thing to test and work on and iterate over and get feedback on can be really useful, and that can end up being a differentiating factor in your application in the end.
Yeah, that's right. And also, if you try to test everything at once and you get feedback, you don't really know what the feedback relates to. Yeah. So if you're trying to test like the sign-up process or test something else, you need to break it up into pieces so that you can really understand what the feedback is directed at. The third piece of storytelling is a real critical part, because oftentimes, and I think we've seen it in some of the just rough and ready presentations that we've had at the program already, people tell you the facts about something, and it's really easy to tell you the facts, like what it is, what it does for you, why you should give me money, or why you should buy it. If you can weave it into a story about real people, it has a much bigger impact. So if you can say, I want to tell you about a story of a guy I met whose name was Joe. He couldn't walk before we met, and he had this terrible disease, and you know how it goes. And then and here's how he is now. You can show pictures of people or of kind of prototypes of the kind of people that that you're interested in. That has much more power. People remember that much more. They get emotionally involved in it, and that's really what you want. It's not an intellectual kind of process. We're not sold an intellectual process. You want emotional involvement, and humans have developed to tell stories as a way of connecting with each other, connecting with our history, connecting with our daily lives, and so doing that and having that skill is really, really powerful.
Excellent. Thank you so much for
All
this.
right.
I got a lot out of the session yesterday, and it's a good opportunity to share this with a lot of the companies I work with in BizPark. So
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
really
very
happy
much.
to have this chance. It's a pleasure.